Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of compelling material and give you the distilled knowledge you need to rethink, well, everything.
Today we are diving into a really powerful book that it basically challenges the entire foundation of how we approach personal achievement, happiness, and change.
That's right. I mean, for centuries, we've been told that if you want to make a radical personal change, quit some destructive habit, hit a huge goal, or just find some inner peace, it's got to be this slow, grinding effort.
Right. Brute force willpower. Maybe a lifetime of therapy.
Exactly. But the core premise of this book is that whole model it's just wrong.
Completely wrong. It proposes that the deep, lasting transformation you're looking for isn't achieved through this slow process of attrition.
It happens instantly.
Instantly. Now, that doesn't mean you wake up tomorrow morning with perfect serenity.
Of course not.
But the change is instantaneous. In the moment, you fundamentally shift your internal view of reality.
And that is such a key distinction. That whole you can't teach an old dog new tricks idea, it's so baked into our culture.
It is. And it kind of gives us permission to fail our New Year's resolutions, right?
Totally. But this book gives us the philosophical groundwork to understand why we're just fundamentally mistaken about how change even works.
Yeah, the mechanism of change. It's not about more willpower. You need a whole new operating system.
And this idea of instantaneous change is framed so beautifully in the intro with this analogy of a sealed cave.
It's a great story. It comes from the 19th century Indian sage, Sri Ramakrishna. So imagine a cave sealed up in a mountain for thousands and thousands of years.
Okay, so it's just steeped in total darkness for millennia.
Exactly. And when you finally remove the rocks blocking the entrance, you expose the inside to the sun. Now, here's the question. Does that darkness dissipate little by little?
Or does it just vanish? Instantly.
Instantly. The darkness, no matter how long it's been there, it doesn't need a slow Herculean push. It's just gone the moment the light comes in.
And that's the promise for our behavior, for our habits.
Yes. It doesn't matter if a destructive pattern or a self-defeating belief has been with you for decades. The potential for a radical transformation is right there, right now. It's immediate.
So if it's not willpower, and it's not this slow, grinding effort, what is the light that we're supposed to introduce?
Well, that's the mission of the book, and really our mission for this deep dive. We're going to give you the precise tools, both intellectual and psychological, to engineer this immediate change.
And we do that by looking at something we barely even notice we have, our mental models.
Exactly. Our task is to show you how to identify those deeply ingrained ideas you use to view the world, which, you often mistake for objective reality itself.
And once you realize they're just models,
you have the power to swap them out. And when you do that, your reaction to the world, it changes instantly.
So let's start there with the engine of this radical change. Mental models. How does the book actually define them? And, why do they have so much power over us?
A mental model is, it's simply a deeply held, often unconscious notion about how the world works.
Okay.
They're like the hidden operating system of your life. They run silently in the background, making judgments about everything from, traffic patterns to how a conversation with your spouse is going to go.
To what even counts as success in the first place.
Absolutely. You have hundreds of these models running your life.
And the central problem, the book says, is that we don't see them as models. We think the model is reality.
Yes, we assume everyone sees the world exactly as we do. For instance, a common one in our society might be, achievement requires constant public validation.
Right. If you believe that, you spend your whole life chasing external markers, climbing the ladder, getting the right car, the perfect promotion.
But then you meet someone who totally breaks that model. Say, a brilliant scientist who finds complete fulfillment just in the quiet of their research.
And suddenly your model is challenged. That opens the door to change.
And the power of just a small tweak in one of these models can completely redefine your experience. The book has this incredible story about an investment banker whose marriage was just falling apart.
Right. This guy was super successful, putting in crushing hours, providing this, lavish, beautiful life for his family.
In his mind, his actions were screaming, I care. But when he'd come home late, his wife would just assail him, criticizing him for not prioritizing the family.
So he hears criticism, and his natural reaction is to get defensive. He's thinking, I'm providing all this money, how can you say I don't care?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And their relationship just became this endless, destructive cycle of fighting because their models of what care looks like just didn't align at all.
So what was his model?
His old model was pretty straightforward. I work hard, I provide financially, therefore I am a loving husband. So he interpreted his wife's attacks through this defensive filter as her just being selfish and self-absorbed.
Okay, so then he goes to his meditation teacher.
And the teacher gives him a completely new frame and new model.
That seems like a huge leap, though. I mean, if someone is literally shouting at you that you don't care, how do you train yourself to hear what love or desire? Sounds a little naive.
And that is precisely the challenge. But the transformation is in the model, not the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
The teacher reminds the banker of this story where a young kid he was mentoring started pounding on his chest because the banker was late.
Okay.
And the banker understood that. He knew the kid was just expressing frustration and a desire for him to be there. It's a primitive cry for presence.
See where this is going.
So the teacher then asks him, can you not see that when your wife attacks you, she is truly saying, I love you, I need you, I want to be with you, why are you not here?
That reframing is everything. It instantly replaces that old defensive model of she's selfish with a new compassionate one.
Yeah.
She's lonely and she's just desiring a connection.
Yes, and this is the mechanism of instantaneous change from the cave analogy. The banker's perception shifted immediately. He went from feeling attacked,
Which triggers our fight or flight defense.
to feeling needed, which triggers compassion and empathy.
So the next time she launched into a tirade.
He didn't bring up his income or his hours. He just responded with deep gentleness, validation, compassion. And she immediately ran out of steam because she realized her real message, the one underneath the anger, had finally been heard.
And their relationship began to heal literally overnight. The world didn't change at all, but his model of the world did.
It's a phenomenal story. But, the challenge is still identifying those deep-seated models in the first place because they're so often buried under layers of mental static.
Which brings us to the internal work that's required. The book has this beautiful analogy for it. The mind as a garden.
Yeah, when most people think of a cultivated mind, they picture Monet's garden at Giverny, this just incredible, lush, vibrant Eden.
It looks like nature just perfectly sculpted itself.
But the book points out the hidden effort, right? The sweaty, back-breaking work. Monet's garden didn't just happen. It requires constant, relentless, expert maintenance and weeding. It's a daily chore.
And your mind, the book argues, is the most fertile garden you will ever see.
It will grow anything you plant in it. But whether it becomes this beautiful Eden full of purpose and joy or just an overgrown mess choked with poison ivy depends entirely on how conscientiously you do the weeding.
And those weeds are the constant mental chatter.
Coveting what others have. Jealousy, lust, anger, self-pity, resentment. All those insidious addictions and destructive thought patterns that just rob us of our peace.
And they grow so fast because the soil is just so receptive.
This leads to a really critical concept the book calls the persistence of clarity. We often hear advice about meditation or reflection as if it's a one-time fix for, spiritual awakening.
Right. But the book compares maintaining your mind not to some heroic expedition, but to just doing laundry.
You don't do laundry once and then expect your clothes to stay clean forever. They're constantly getting dirty.
So you have a moment of profound clarity after a good meditation session, and then an hour later, the weeds of jealousy or worry sprout right back up because someone cut you off in traffic.
Exactly. So achieving clarity and serenity is not a once-and-done proposition. The mental garden needs constant care. We're always reverting to being these ego-driven automatons jerked about by fickle desires, as the book puts it.
So the maintenance, the meditation, the reflection, finding supportive people, that has to become a permanent, non-negotiable part of your daily life.
Just like cleaning the clothes you intend to wear.
And the source of those really tenacious weeds is what the book calls the demon that will not let you be.
This is that persistent, non-stop mental chatter that's with us everywhere we go.
The book uses this terrifying parable of Sinbad and the old man of the sea.
Yeah, Sinbad, out of generosity, he hoists this old man onto his shoulders to help him cross the stream. But the old man immediately locks his legs around Sinbad's neck, starts beating him with a stick, and forces Sinbad to go wherever he wants. Sinbad is just completely dominated by this burden.
Sinbad, old man! That's our mental chatter. It's relentless.
Think about it. When was the last time when literally nothing was bothering you, even for 5 minutes of perfect internal silence?
It's almost impossible to imagine. There's always something. Your career, your health, some political thing that's annoying you, anxiety about the future.
It just locks its legs around us, constantly dragging us down with worry and pining.
And that chatter is the mind constantly pulling our attention outward, away from the present moment. The book calls the mind a wedding crasher.
Right, like this character named Corbett, who didn't just crash weddings for a free meal, he actively sowed discord.
He'd whisper to the bride that she was only the most beautiful woman the groom was ever engaged to.
Or he'd make the groom doubt his fiancée by mentioning some supposed fling. The mind, like Corbett, is constantly planting worry and doubt and dissension, pulling us from internal peace into external distress.
And the biggest mistake we make with this demon, the book says, is that we treat this mental chatter as if it's real news. Even though it's fake, we still trust it.
That's our most common and most destructive mistake. We believe this relentless chatter is us, and even worse, that it's true.
We see this catastrophic error in the story of Paul.
Paul's an executive VP, and he's completely convinced he's being passed over for the CEO job. He's just consumed by jealousy and resentment toward the other VP, Steve.
He sees Steve laughing with the retiring CEO, Ralph, and then he interprets Steve's request for an investigation into his new marketing initiative as clear sabotage.
Paul's mental model just created this vicious, elaborate scenario in his head. He was sure Steve had badmouthed him, that Ralph was turning against him, that his entire career was over.
He was so convinced he actually drafted his resignation letter right before the board meeting.
And then as he's walking past Steve's office, he sees the agenda on a monitor. CEO succession. And that one detail, combined with his existing negative story, just cemented his certainty that he had lost.
His suffering was intense. I mean, real depression, anxiety, deep despair.
But here's the twist. When Paul enters the boardroom, he's greeted with cheers.
He was the new CEO.
He was the new CEO. Steve had actually been presenting findings showing that Paul's initiative was a huge success, and Steve himself was leaving to start his own firm with Ralph's backing.
So Paul's intricate, detailed, life-altering suffering, the days and weeks and months of manufactured anguish, was entirely baseless.
100% false.
What?
His internal narrative had no bearing on reality, yet he suffered as if it were already true. That's the ultimate danger of mental chatter.
So if this demon is constantly whispering fake news in our ear, what's the simple solution?
The book says we have to develop the skill to detach, to become a witness of the mental chatter.
Not a participant.
Exactly. When you begin to recognize that the inner voice is not necessarily telling the truth, its power instantly diminishes. You are not the voice. You are the one listening to the voice.
So when Paul learned to just watch those thoughts of jealousy and fear come and go without identifying with them,
He saw them as clouds passing in the sky. They're just voices in your head, not gospel truth. And most importantly, they are not you. And that detachment, that's the first real step toward reclaiming your internal garden.
this exploration of the internal landscape reveals a pretty profound paradox. It moves us beyond just self-help and into philosophy. We might have all the political freedom in the world, but internally, the book argues, we are held captive in what it calls the marvelous prison.
That it's such a crucial distinction. When we talk about freedom, our minds immediately go to external restrictions, right? Freedom of speech, assembly, movement.
But the real crushing prison is the internal one, being prey to what the book calls the ruthless harpies of desire, avarice, addiction, overwhelming ambition.
These desires, they consume all our available time and energy. They just shatter our peace or shred repose, as the book so elegantly puts it.
So we spend our lives building these elaborate careers, accumulating wealth, thinking we're buying freedom.
Well, and really, we're just becoming more and more beholden to the systems and structures required to maintain all that stuff.
The book illustrates this so well with two paradoxes. The first one is the sage and the student.
Right. The sage lived very simply on lentils. He needed nothing. His successful student, pitying his poverty, offers to take him to the king so the sage could live richly.
On one condition.
The condition was he would have to praise his majesty. And the sage just weeps and replies, "Do you not see that if you would learn to subsist on lentils, you would not have to praise his majesty?"
True freedom comes from minimizing needs, not from maximizing external wealth or power.
If you need less, fewer people and fewer institutions can exert control over you.
The second paradox is a historical one, and it's fascinating. It contrasts East and West Berlin during the Cold War.
Yeah, West Berliners were heavily subsidized. They had material abundance, consumer choice, all of that, and yet they were frequently anxiety-ridden and often complained of having impoverished inner lives.
And on the other side of the wall, the East Berliners, they were subject to severe political restrictions and a kind of drab, uniform existence. They couldn't even choose the color of their own home.
But they improvised. They created these rich, fulfilling lives by investing heavily in community. They formed poetry circles, they prioritized family, they developed these strong internal lives.
And they actually reported higher levels of dignity and purpose than they do now after reunification and all the material plenty.
The message is just crystal clear. The most important freedom is the internal one. The ability to quiet the mind without constantly reaching for some external stimulus or reward.
And if that prison is built of desire, then ambition is the corrosive acid that dissolves our well-being and our connection to the present moment.
You know, most of society frames ambition as this unqualified good thing, an earnest desire for some type of achievement. We're taught to strive for it.
But the book suggests this relentless focus on the future creates a state of perpetual dissatisfaction.
Absolutely. The problem with ambition is that by its very nature, it makes you unhappy with the present. It forces you to live for some future goal that may or may not ever come.
And even if it does materialize, it's never going to provide that permanent joy and peace that you were hoping for.
Never. That joy, if it's going to exist at all, it has to exist now in the process. Chasing a future state of happiness is just a guarantee of present-day angst.
We see the ultimate price paid for that in the really sobering story of Gabriel, the investment banker.
Oh, man. He came from poverty and built this colossal fortune by innovating the securitization of litigation. He achieved his ambition in every single material sense of the word.
But the cost was immense.
He paid for it. He completely missed his children's childhoods. His wife eventually just walked out, totally exhausted by his absence, without even putting up a fight.
And then his body gave out.
2 devastating strokes left him paralyzed, barely able to speak. And in his final lucid moments, the only insistent, shrill voice he could hear was the realization that he had wasted his life and destroyed himself in pursuit of his ambition.
The external success became a literal internal death sentence. It's a chilling story.
And we contrast that destructive pursuit with the story of Ted.
Ted was a managing director at a prestigious consulting firm, the very pinnacle of corporate success. But the job was, as the book says, sucking his soul dry.
So he chose freedom. He quit to start a much smaller, more selective consultancy.
And his mother-in-law's reaction was predictable.
Oh, yeah. She saw him as a fool, a failure for walking away from that huge corporate income and status.
But Ted's wife, who was the true witness to his transformation, she saw the complete opposite.
Ted was suddenly more cheerful, more engaged, more fun to be with. They had a wonderful decade. His success was no longer judged by the external standard of his paycheck or his title, but by internal markers.
Deep well-being, joy, time with his kids.
The true measure of success is internal health.
This internal focus leads us right to this common dilemma of purpose. So many of us are toiling in a job we dislike, just waiting to follow some mythical passion that we assume is outside our current situation.
And the book has what it calls the great secret, which confronts this directly. Passion does not exist in the job. It exists in you.
If you can't find a way to ignite passion within yourself right where you are now,
the book guarantees you will not find it outside yourself, no matter how many jobs you change or cities you move to.
So all the obstacles we cite, the job is boring, my coworkers are annoying, the time demands are too high, those are all just external justifications.
Exactly. They're external justifications for an internal failure to engage. They're just thoughts, and they only have the power to drag us into these dark, emotional domains if we let them.
So the current job, even if it feels mundane, it's actually a training ground.
It's a necessary crucible to disentangle ourselves from our very strong desires for things to be different.
We see this played out perfectly with the story of the broker who became an entertainment mogul.
Yeah, this guy graduates from Harvard Business School with these huge ambitions, but he gets grudgingly assigned to the entertainment sector, which was not prestigious at all back then.
He resented it. It didn't align with his model of what success looked like.
But instead of quitting, he chose to make peace with the position. He just focused relentlessly on becoming genuinely, profoundly knowledgeable about movies, music, and media.
He stopped striving for the external recognition and just devoted himself to the process of mastery.
And then organically, as that sector exploded and became this massive industry, he naturally became the premier analyst. Titans of the industry like Steve Ross and Lou Wasserman were seeking him out because he had this unparalleled, hard-won expertise.
So he didn't chase a different passion. He cultivated passion and expertise in the job he was given.
His internal shift changed his external reality without him ever needing to pursue or enforce an external outcome.
And this acceptance, this non-resistance, is just a profound key to internal freedom. It links back to that powerful quote from Rumi the book uses.
If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me, and without pain. That wisdom just cuts the mental and physical tethers that bind us to so much unnecessary struggle and stress.
So now that we've kind of established the philosophical foundation, the cave, the garden, the prison of ambition, we can move to the actionable, practical tools the book provides to actually engineer these internal shifts in our daily lives.
Right. And we start with this fundamental principle of psychological projection, which the book frames so well as, the dirt is on your face.
It's such a great image. The principle is, we never see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
If there's dirt on your face, you can try to clean the mirror all day long, but the dirt is still on you.
Exactly. What you persistently notice and get angry about in other people is more often than not a problem you're resisting in yourself.
The person who constantly complains about how long-winded and boring everyone else is.
There's almost certainly a persistent bore themselves.
The self-centered lout laments the selfishness of others. It's the ego's way of externalizing an uncomfortable internal truth.
There's a great line from a surgeon in the program who summarized it perfectly. If you can spot it, you got it.
It's so true. We see the world through our unique self-constructed lens, filtering everything through our own professional biases or personal preoccupations.
The book has this humorous anecdote that just illustrates this perfectly. Patrick, a tailor who became a multimillionaire, was granted a private audience with the Pope.
So he comes back, and his admiring relatives are all asking him, how was the Holy Father? What profound insights did he share with you?
And Patrick's instant professional reply,
Size 38 long. But he's tough to outfit because his trousers are size 42.
he didn't hear a word of the spiritual wisdom. His entire perception was filtered through his singular expertise tailoring.
It's proof that we are literally incapable of experiencing objective reality. We only ever experience our own interpretation of it.
So, moving from that tendency toward projection, we can pivot to presence. The book offers these immediately applicable techniques for confronting fear and anxiety, especially when you feel totally overwhelmed.
We all have those days, right, where everything just goes catastrophically wrong. Those moments where you're just spinning out of control and you want to shut the door and howl.
Think of Peter's horrendous day in the book. His daughter cried all night, he was late for a huge meeting, a key customer canceled a massive order, and then his wife calls because the furnace guy set off the house alarm.
He was completely derailed by physiological stress.
So the book outlines this simple but really effective 5-minute technique for coping with that kind of disaster and reclaiming your presence.
And the steps are very deliberate because they're designed to interrupt that physiological stress loop. So, step 1. Sit upright. Both feet flat on the ground, straight spine.
Why the straight spine?
Because posture directly impacts your brain chemistry. Slumping fosters lethargy and a sense of defeat, while an upright posture signals alertness and control to your nervous system.
Okay, so then step 2 is breathing.
Deeply and slowly, using diaphragmatic breathing, make sure your stomach expands. It's the fastest way to signal your vagus nerve that you're safe, and it downregulates that fight or flight response.
Step 3. Observe the relentless mental chatter, the worry, the rage, the frustration, but without reacting to it or judging it. Just watch it.
Step 4. Pause. Ask yourself if that angry email you're about to send or that sharp comment you're about to make will actually serve your longer-term interests.
And finally, step 5. Calmly prioritize the single most important task you have to do right now and dedicate your full attention just to that.
The whole technique is designed to stop the momentum of that internal hurricane and force you back into conscious, rational action. It helps you develop deep presence.
This focus on small disruptions is also central to another concept the book details from Michael Singer, the beep moment.
Yes. It's that small, trivial disruption, the impatient car beep the second the light turns green, the annoying line at the coffee shop. That's what truly throws us off our game and can color our entire day.
And the key to freedom isn't just handling the big catastrophes.
Not at all. It's recognizing that if we let a trivial beep upset us, we forfeit our right to choose how we react to a contentious son or an irritated boss later on.
So the freedom is in that moment of choice. Am I going to let this little disturbance govern my emotional state?
And you can choose not to. And this choice can be applied even to our deepest, most systemic fears, which brings us to this powerful 4-step strategy for dealing with fear.
Okay, step 1.
List your predictable disturbances. Don't avoid them. Write them down. Is it the fear that your career has stalled? the fear that your kid will make bad life choices.
Step 2. Think of the worst-case scenario. Be really detailed. Getting fired, spouse leaving, running out of money.
We usually fear the unknown, so shine a bright light on it. Step 3 is crucial. Recognize that it's just a thought, and then create a calm, rational, measured action plan for if it actually happens.
So you're preparing without paralyzing yourself with fear. If I get fired, I will immediately update my resume and contact 3 recruiters.
Precisely. And fourth, you go about your business, focusing relentlessly on your intent and your current actions. The very act of making peace with the absolute worst-case scenario just strips the fear of its power to terrify you, and it leaves you free to act in the present.
You know, a lot of our sustained suffering comes from our persistent failure to apply the lesson of letting go of the past. We cling to hurts and resentments and perceive slights like a 100-pound rock tied to our backs.
And the book has this simple but really profound lesson it calls the baby's lesson.
Right. A baby wails in total frustration when the bottle is taken away. It experiences that disappointment fully.
But the moment the bottle comes back, he is instantly back to drinking and gurgling happily. The baby is excellent at experiencing the emotion completely, but then immediately letting it go.
And we, on the other hand, are experts at experiencing the emotion and then perpetually recreating it day after day after day. We are lousy at the letting it go.
So how the heck do you actually let go of a painful memory or a heartbreak that feels so real, so present?
The core technique is to separate yourself from the persistent, painful thoughts. The book tells the story of Felicity, who was heartbroken after a breakup and was just wallowing in her grief.
She realized, though, that the pain wasn't coming from the reality of the past relationship itself, but from the vivid thought of the future life she had built up in her head. It was like a sandcastle that had just crumbled.
So by realizing the pain was stemming from a thought, a mental construction, not from reality, she gained some leverage. She began refusing to identify with those thoughts.
The book says thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They come and they go. If you can stand back and refuse to identify with the clouds of pain or anger or loss, they just lose all their power.
You're not the memory, you're the witness of the memory.
That separation liberates you from all the historical junk you've been dragging around for years.
And that leads to the final, really revolutionary idea in this section. You can rewrite your past.
This is huge. The events that happened in your past matter a little, but the stories you tell yourself about what happened matter a great deal.
We construct these narratives to make sense of our suffering, and we often build them on totally faulty assumptions.
This is tragically demonstrated by the long, painful story of Joe and Frank. Joe was this academic superstar at an elite school, but he was on scholarship, surrounded by wealthier, more privileged classmates. He felt completely excluded and ashamed.
And he idolized Frank, a wealthy classmate who was always civil to him. But Joe interpreted Frank's behavior through his own lens of deep shame.
Right. So when Frank, for example, asked Joe to spend a weekend alone together, Joe's interpretation was that Frank was embarrassed to be seen with him publicly.
So he gruffly rejected the invitation, which just furthered his own isolation.
And Joe carried this bitterness and feeling of deep rejection for decades. The book calls it a molten ball of lead in his stomach, just poisoning every subsequent relationship and decision.
Years later, he runs into Frank at a business meeting and is ready to just walk out because he's certain Frank is going to sabotage him.
But when he actually speaks to Frank, the truth is revealed. Frank had a completely different story.
A different mental model of the same events.
Totally. Frank genuinely admired Joe's intellect and was in fact ashamed of his own shallow, entitled friends. He intentionally engineered that one-on-one time with Joe, hoping to connect over Joe's profound mathematical interests, and he was deeply wounded when Joe rejected him.
Wow. So Joe's entire lifetime of suffering, that molten ball of lead, was entirely self-constructed based on an incorrect interpretation of Frank's actions.
His faulty mental model. The original events mattered very little. The poisonous story Joe told himself about those events dictated the entire course of his adult life.
The crucial lesson is that we have to choose our stories wisely, because they are often the only thing keeping us in pain.
So, having learned the tools to witness our thoughts and reframe our past, we can turn to the ultimate goal, building a new default internal domain. And the book argues that this domain has to be gratitude.
This is one of the most powerful and tangible shifts available to us. The book uses this lovely, unforgettable image of the rossogola.
Yeah, it's a sweet white Indian dessert that's spongy and just soaked in sugary syrup. And the point is, no matter how you mistreat it, you drop it, you beat it, you throw it, only sugary syrup comes out.
Why? Because that's what's inside.
Exactly. In the same way, anger, frustration, and fear erupt from you because they are already inside, just waiting to be triggered by some external event.
But if gratitude is your internal default, then no matter what life throws at you, you respond with compassion and reasoned action, not rage or despair.
It is a physiological impossibility to be deeply, genuinely grateful and profoundly angry or fearful at the same time. Gratitude has to become your internal, non-negotiable emotional domain.
It's the only way to guarantee a compassionate, useful response to chaos.
And this internal transformation can be immediate and profound. We see that with the lawyer's turnaround story.
Right. This was a 52-year-old attorney, deeply in debt, facing professional lawsuits, living in this dingy, hot apartment. He'd been dumped by his girlfriend and just felt like he was at rock bottom.
And he gets introduced to this concept and begins focusing consciously and constantly on feeling gratitude.
Yeah.
He didn't just intellectually list things he was thankful for.
No, he dedicated time every single day to mindfully feeling it in his body.
And he flipped his attention from the 2 or 3 monumental things that were terribly wrong in his life to the 50 or 500 things that were still pretty darn good.
And the moment he changed his internal focus, his external world responded.
It did. Within a year, he experienced financial gain, significant weight loss, and profound inner peace. The universe, or maybe just his own newly focused energy, responded quickly to the new person he was actively becoming.
He stopped defining himself by the external problem and started defining himself by his internal state of appreciation.
And this profound shift naturally leads us to question our entire cultural model of striving, the relentless pursuit of success. We are all caught in this damaging if-then trap of life.
If I reach that goal, then I will be happier.
It's a profoundly flawed model because your happiness becomes conditional on an outcome that is almost always partially outside of your control.
So if you're fixated on the outcome, you are constantly setting yourself up for anxiety, depression, and crushing disappointment when random events inevitably derail your carefully laid plans.
The more we attach to the outcome, the more we suffer when reality diverges from our wishes.
The healthier principle, then, is investing entirely in the process, not the outcome.
We're always taught to go for it until we reach the goal. But true freedom comes from detaching your internal well-being from the external result.
I mean, look at the legendary basketball coach John Wooden.
The master of process.
Yeah.
For 27 years at UCLA, he never once talked to his players about winning or the score. He only talked about giving the best effort of which they were capable, tying their shoes correctly, practicing the fundamentals, being fully present in the moment.
He famously told them, if you do that, then the score really doesn't matter, although I have a feeling that if you do that, the score will be to your liking.
He knew that focusing on the controllable process, your effort and preparation, was the only way to achieve consistent excellence. The outcome was just a side effect of mastering the process.
And this principle of detaching from the outcome allows for something the book calls the surrender experiment.
This isn't about passivity. It's about releasing that desperate need to impose your will onto every single situation.
It's exemplified by Michael Singer, who was a doctoral student studying for a public finance exam.
Right. He was so busy with his spiritual practice that he hadn't studied at all, and he fully expected to fail. So he decides to just experiment with surrendering to the universe, rather than fighting it or trying to cram.
He reads 3 random sections of the textbook the night before and 3 more the next morning, basically expecting to drop out of the program.
The exam had 6 questions. He needed to answer 3. And in this unbelievable coincidence, 3 of the questions dealt with the exact random sections he had chosen to read.
He got an A and a commendation.
It raises this profound question for all of us. Do we have to impose our will with constant struggle and anxiety, or can we let a greater, maybe unseen wisdom guide us effortlessly if we just do the necessary focused work?
Can you trust the process even if the outcome is totally uncertain?
And this shift in focus is so critical. We have to move from doing to being. When you're faced with a paralyzing dilemma, should I quit this job? Should I stay in this marriage? And the book urges us to stop asking, what should I do?
And pivot to the much more profound question, who am I being?
Are you being a victim of your external circumstances, constantly indulging in self-pity and resentment? Or are you being a calm, serene, intentional person, grateful for the many things in your life and acting from a place of integrity?
The external outcome of your choice matters far less than who you are being while you make it and live through it.
This is best exemplified by that anecdote of the 3 teachers, Mary, Joan, and Eleanor. They all had the exact same job as kindergarten teachers, same pay, same classroom. but their lives were dramatically different based on their internal frame.
Mary resented all the chores, saw herself as just a temporary custodian of children from uncaring families, and was just constantly bitter. She was miserable, and she died alone.
Joan saw herself as simply teaching, reading, writing, and arithmetic. She was adequate, functional, and mostly forgotten.
But Eleanor made an active, conscious choice every single morning.
She decided to love each child who was entrusted to her, seeing herself as a potter shaping magnificent works of art. She encouraged their dreams. She set this foundational integrity within them. Her life, though outwardly simple, was incredibly rich and fulfilling.
When Eleanor died, people traveled from across the country to bid her adieu.
And one of her former students, who had become a prime minister of a nation, credited her profound influence. The outcome teaching kindergarten was secondary. Who she was being, a loving, intentional shaper of minds, was the primary driver of her fulfilled life and her legacy.
We can finalize this segment with the crucial concept of working with love. We race around desperately seeking work we love.
But Khalil Gibran teaches us the true, enduring path. Put love into the work you are doing now.
We so often treat the tasks we dislike with resentment, that subtle feeling that we're too good for the chore or that it's beneath us, and that resentment just poisons the action itself.
The book details a simple, powerful example of that. The host's wife had these beautiful potted plants, and she asked him to water them.
But he just poured water on them quickly, aggressively, with resentment at having to do the chore, and he killed many of the delicate flowers with this heavy stream of water.
His wife was visibly upset. She pointed out that the plants were like babies, and they needed to be watered with love, with a gentle trickle of intentional care.
Working with love means weaving the cloth with threads drawn from your heart as if your beloved were to wear it.
It means cleaning the office or responding to a difficult customer with the same affection and presence you would dedicate to a passion project. If you commit to putting love into what you're doing now, sincerely and mindfully, you might just discover that your perfect station is exactly where you are already standing.
The work changes, not because the task changed, but because of the intentionality you brought to it.
As we conclude this deep dive into radical personal change and shifting mental models, we have to return to the inescapable lesson that frees us from the anxiety of all this endless striving, the illusion of permanence and suffering.
We spend a tremendous amount of emotional energy trying to control, to gather, to hoard, and to cherish external things. Diplomas, wealth, keepsakes, status. But all of it is subject to time and space and will eventually be stripped away.
The book gives the poignant example of the smoked glass table the author desperately desired when he first got married. It was the centerpiece of his life.
And decades later, paint-streaked and forgotten, it was put out for garbage collection. It was gone the next morning.
Everything, from a prize table to vast empires, follows this exact path. Imperious Caesar, dead and turned to clay. The sun may never set on an empire, but eventually it does.
Recognizing this transience is crucial because it allows us to refocus. All that emotional energy spent striving for position or power will one day be forgotten and utterly disregarded.
The key is recognizing that the true, enduring value of what you're doing is not the external success or failure of your efforts, but the profound internal change these efforts produce in you, the character you build, the lessons you absorb.
This realization also brings us back to the fact that so much of our daily grief is manufactured. We don't just suffer a loss, we often choose to amplify it and recreate it.
Consider the compelling modern story of Saru from the movie Lion. He was lost as a child, adopted by an Australian couple. Decades later, he finds his birth mother and asks about his older brother, Gudu.
Only to learn Gudu had died the very night Saru was lost.
And Saru just dissolves into tears, experiencing this deep, raw, decades-old heartache, all of it manufactured in the present moment.
The book insightfully challenges this reaction. It points out that the pain was sorrow manufactured today by his mind. He took a painful memory, he infused it with current emotion, mixed it with recent knowledge, and willingly chose to experience profound, acute pain.
We indulge in this needless suffering every single time we relive a past mistake or anxiously worry about a future that may never even happen.
So, we end with a provocative final thought and a challenge for you, the listener. Why do you suffer? Why do you indulge in self-defeating behaviors? The corrosive ambition, the relentless procrastination, ignoring your family, self-pity.
The book's answer is because you don't know how much they are truly harming you. You lack visceral clarity about the danger.
To achieve that clarity, the book uses the out-of-control car analogy. If you saw a car careening toward you at high speed, you wouldn't pause to worry about a torn suit or getting a few scratches.
You would instantly dive through the nearest thick hedge without a moment's hesitation to save yourself. Why? Because you deeply and viscerally what the danger is and the instantaneous necessity of action.
We need that same level of visceral clarity about the imminent danger of our destructive mental programming, our faulty models, and our constant ego-driven chatter.
The challenge, then, is to achieve this clarity through deep, continuous reflection, meditating on death, on transience, on impermanence, until the danger of attachment becomes palpable.
And then use that newfound freedom to act with conscious, mindful intent, being of service purely because you can be of service.
This act of service, done without any expectation of thanks or acknowledgement, is the only true brick on which a genuinely fulfilled life is built.
Go out there and start weeding your garden, not through effort, but through the instantaneous light of reinterpretation. We'll see you on the next deep dive.